And with that, welcome back to the Ghost and Friends YouTube channel. I'm at peace right now. I switched up the intro music a little bit. Welcome, John Tweets Sports back to the channel. It kind of threw me off. How are you, brother?
Dude, I had to wake up. I was meditating. I was in the zen with that countdown music. I was like, man, here we go. This is awesome.
I forgot we had a
Um,
show to do.
I know. Yeah, I was excited for the music. No, I'm excited to be here. Great to be with you again. Hope you're having a good. I guess baseball season now for Texas. I don't know where are we in the scheme of things. But I hope you're having a good
And it's
good
always
season.
basketball season until it's not. And
Well,
we do have the women going, which the number
oh
one
yeah,
ranked team
number
in the
one. No,
country.
I
So
totally forgot. There we go. That's where it is. Women's
and
basketball.
honestly, everyone knows we're here to talk softest fan bases in the SEC. And John is probably, I'd say, about 3/4 of the inspiration behind this show tonight. So credit John for us being here. Obviously, he asked Grok. For you guys that are only on YouTube, Grok is an AI tool on the X app, formerly known as Twitter. Ask Grok anything. Grok will give you a pretty solid answer. Well, maybe not this time, depending on who you are. So, and then I'd say the other bit of motivation was the reaction from some LSU faithful after Madison Booker was named the SEC Women's Basketball Player of the Year today. A lot of toxicity going on the LX app in regards to that. Now, I will say that Miss Morrow at LSU, fantastic player and equally as deserving as Madison. I don't think there is a real loser in this case, to be honest, because everybody knows both names all over the country. But with that being said, we're going to get right into it. We're here to talk softest fan bases in the SEC.
Yep.
I am going to I wore gray over my burnt orange. I'm going to do my best to be neutral here. I'm going to give my full opinion on everybody, including our own fan base.
Yep.
But with that being said, guests go first. So I don't want you just one name, John. I saw Grok.
Yep.
I can't believe Texas looks as good as they do, Lounge. I'm really sorry that the way that it's going on. If you'd have said that we go in on the road and lead you guys here, over a quarter of the way into the second half, I'd be pretty shocked. But
here, Lounge, for the record, he said we're sacrificing basketball for baseball. Lounge is on record as saying tear down the hump, which is the basketball arena at Mississippi State, and expand Duty Noble Field, the baseball field. So I think I'm not sure he's too upset with what's happening at the basketball game.
I like the hump. My first experience with the hump was when John Wall and DeMarcus Cousins were at Kentucky, and I was like, oh, Kentucky's only given up 2 points on the road at Mississippi State. This is going to be the easiest thing in the world. I think Kentucky won by like 4 in double overtime. Mississippi State was like a 500 ball club. And I was like, oh, this is pretty good basketball atmosphere. But man, y'all are top 25. So y'all can afford a loss here. Unfortunately, Texas cannot. So I guess we have to have this one. I don't know if it'll matter in the grand scheme of things, but that's talk for another day. Back to fan bases. John, I just want to rough like a handful of fan bases that you think do a pretty dang good job about, being thick-skinned before we get into some of the softer fan bases. Hold on. There he is.
I'm back. Sorry.
He's back.
That was on
great.
me. That was on me. Yeah.
It's all good.
Mm-hmm.
So, if you don't mind.
Kentucky, John Wall. Yeah.
Oh, no, I was going to say, back to fan bases real quick. Mm-hmm. Give me maybe 2, 3, 4, 5 fan bases that you think, whether it be in person or on any of the social media platforms that we're all obsessed with, that do a really good job of being kind of thick-skinned. They can take it on the chin. They are not overreacting or panicking to losses. Before we get to some of the ones that we think are softer, let's give credit to the ones we think do a good job.
Yeah. So listen, I think when you think about, I think we need to define, like you mentioned, take it on the chin. I think we need to define softest first. Really what I mean is that every fan base, if you're worth your salt, you're going to get riled up. You're going to get in the mix. You're going to do those things. Certain fan bases do that without getting defensive and whiny and trying too hard to be right or too hard to kind of troll back instead of taking it. So for me, I think you got to start, and this is just by default for me, just because they don't have a ton of fans in general, but and also not a ton of chirp about. But I think Vandy fans are always the fan base that are just like, whatever, man. Like they bow their chest and they go at it when they happen to have an upset or be good, but they don't get too defensive. I would also say it's tricky because different sports, you're going to get a different experience, right? So
True.
um, Kentucky football is pretty good. Basketball, complete opposite. But Kentucky football, they're good at taking it on the chin and being a little bit more resilient. I'd say Mississippi State for me is another one that's pretty good at kind of rolling with
You're
it.
saying that because Lounge is here. Come on.
No. Listen, no, Lounge. I'm saying that. Yeah, well, that's part of the reason I'm saying that, because I have experience with people like Lounge,
Right.
who
No.
are just like
Couldn't resist that.
Man, it is what it is. Those would be, kind of the three that are in that vein for me, that are just like, all right, they're pretty even killed. They can certainly get riled up around certain sports, especially Kentucky basketball, Mississippi State baseball, Vandy baseball, I guess at times, but those three would be on my list to start.
Well, let's do that real quick, though. I think you nailed that in the beginning.
Mm-hmm.
We need to define, softness.
Mm-hmm.
Or when we're calling fan bases soft, are we talking because they overreact to calls on a football field and maybe throw things that influence calls to be overturned? Is that what we're defining as soft? Now, in my experience, and I'm not trying to just defend my own fan base, but in my experience, the SEC is known for having a bit of rabidness throughout the fan base. They care,
Yeah.
and it's not the first time, as I think we saw in the comments a few times. It's not the first time that someone has thrown anything on the field at an SEC football game.
Mm-hmm.
But for me, we played right into social media's hands, because everybody told us how soft we were about horns down and other topics for years. And then in the biggest game of the season at that juncture, we do that, which was why I was so outwardly spoken against it and how much I disliked it, simply because I was like, well, they got us right here. And so I'm not surprised that old Grok has us where we're at. I'm sure there's been a billion Texas is soft tweets, but let's define soft. What is it? The way that people act on social media? Is it coming off a loss? Is it a combination of these things?
It is, in my opinion, it's how you react when things aren't going your way. So that could be bad officiating. It could be a loss. It's that plus expectations versus reality, right? So when those two meet, when you have people who are just kind of just outwardly, I would say, volatile, and their expectation doesn't match the reality of anything, that to me is soft. And when I say that, what I'm really talking about, maybe even a more succinct way to define it, is who do you lash out at? How do you react when things don't go your way for your team? Are you lashing out at other teams? Are you lashing out at the officials? Or are you, because I think everybody has the ability and the right to criticize their own team, to do, whatever, however you want to, get into that. But are you going out there and saying, like, Alabama fans, 18 national championships, right? When you lose a game, get blown out by Oklahoma. I mean, I think there are things like that it's how you react when things aren't going your way, and who you point that reaction toward, I think is how I define soft.
And that's fair. And I mean, with all due respect to a hell of a football program over there, I mean, do they really have 18 titles? And you can't say that on Twitter because you're going to be in for a hell of a day in your mentions. But Texas, I know for a fact, could have another 3 or 4 if we were to claim some of the titles that Alabama's claimed, as far as, using the same criteria. And so it is what it is. And you're going to have Texas fans that did the same thing to A&M fans, and you're going to have Oklahoma fans who do the same things to us and say, hey, what's the record? what's your record against Oklahoma in your lifetime? And, you got to be real about it. It is what it is. But we have to live, I kind of like how, Josh Pate does it as far as going back in like a 4-year model, right? And as far as expectations, obviously on the football field right now, our two programs, I won't say that they're kings of the SEC because you are the king of the SEC, but I like where we're at better than I like the rest. And I don't even know if it's like really, really, really close at this particular moment, and that can change. A lot can change between now and even the college football season, and things might not work out the way we all think they do. But as far as living up to reality, and then they match that with, other than Vanderbilt, I guess Ole Miss. You mentioned anybody else. Is there anyone? I mean, I kind of think I've seen Florida, and now you have a lot of more experience with me than me with these guys, but I think Florida, from what I've seen, is a newcomer. They do a pretty good job because they've kind of been like, yeah, we're terrible, and look at the face. He's telling me what I need to know immediately.
Florida. I'm gonna tell you this right now, right off the jump. Florida and Tennessee are the two softest fan bases in the SEC. Period. Florida, what you've seen from Florida is they just haven't had anything to chirp about in football in particular. And they were nervous as hell going into the last season because everybody was telling them they had the toughest schedule in the country. And they, it's like Billy Napier on the hot seat. And then they managed to win a few games. But Florida for sure is one of the softest. And the reason being is Florida is the fan base that if you beat Florida, so I'll say Georgia, I'll use my example because we have a huge rivalry with Florida, and this does, I have my own biases too, but a huge rivalry with Florida. But objectively, when Georgia is winning, when Georgia is beat Texas, when Georgia, is ranked number 1, when Georgia wins a national championship, whatever. Florida fans are the ones that will come in to comments on a final score graphic that Georgia football posts talking about arrests for speeding tickets, or like they're coming in with all these things that are completely, they're not even involved in the situation. They're not even, the comments they're making are not even relevant. So that's my experience as a Georgia fan, being close rivals. But I will say to your point on the Texas side, I could totally see how you would take the other
yeah, it makes more sense. Yeah. Well, I will say this. I mean, and for anyone on YouTube, thanks for being here for one. But that is kind of college football Twitter in a nutshell, what he just said. I can make a post about a commitment from some 4-star from Georgia. Sorry for the dig. From Georgia. And we will have Aggies talking about Jeff Banks' girlfriend's monkey biting the kid in 2021 on Halloween.
There it is.
And you think we're joking? It happens at least once or twice a year, and we're now in the year 2025. So I mean, and I get it. Things are going to get brought up. It is what it is, and we still get midweek baseball stats brought up for May, and that's all. But that's all we had. And let me tell you this, John. As an active Twitter user, and luckily I came in on the tail end of it, but A&M and Texas fans, the way that they had to, their only battle that they could have, there was none on the field. So all they had was Twitter and Facebook and I guess Instagram to really kind of settle their beefs and go at it. And which they're not settling anything. It's just Texas fans saying, well, we've owned you. And Aggie are saying, we've been the better program. We're in the SEC. We've recruited better. And back and forth. And speaking of, I'll give Evan credit. Thank you for being here, Evan. I've prided myself really, really well on keeping it together on Twitter. Really, really well. I've had Aggies and Sooners say a wide range of things to me. They've really got at me on certain things, but then they realized, hey, this is kind of a worthless effort, and he's not so bad, which kind of pisses off some Texas fans. But October 19th, 2024, Georgia, they got as close to breaking me down as anybody. Evan was very loud and firm in his stance about what he thought about Texas after the game, Coach Hayes, and a plethora of others. Now, I did have a tweet earlier that day that kind of set myself up for disaster.
Yep.
But okay. My 4-year-old just woke up. You want to say hi?
Hi.
What's up, buddy?
Who's the softest SEC fan base?
The Longhorns.
Ouch, that hurts a little bit. Okay, you can go back. Okay, hold on. We're gonna have a talk after this. That hurts.
Let's clip that one.
Oh my gosh, he bodied me harder than Evan did. But so yeah, a little bit. I had to put them all on suspension for a little bit, get over that one. But so that's when I realized like SEC Twitter is a little bit more of a ferocious animal than Big 12 Twitter. Now, which I will give credit to Big 12 Twitter. They're hilarious. That's great, Evan. No horns down. He wouldn't do it. I don't even know if he knows what he's done yet. But
I don't know that he knows what you asked him. So
yeah, fair enough. I don't think we've really gone down that whole path of his fandom yet. But I really thought there was a strong chance he said Aggies. But anyways, so yeah, credit to Georgia fans. I'm going to say this. I've enjoyed my interactions with Georgia fans, not just sucking up to John here, probably more than anybody else. I've honestly had a good time with Tennessee fans because there are so many Vols on that app. They come out of everywhere from under every rock, every alleyway. Don't say anything about the Vols and not expect the Vol Nation to show up in a big, big way. So Tennessee and Florida, by far, in your opinion, the two softest fan bases in the SEC. Now, does this come to in-person experience as well?
This comes to in person. It comes to on Twitter. It comes to even YouTube comments. Anywhere. I mean, anywhere you find connecting with other fan bases, it's going to be Tennessee by far. So I will say that Tennessee is the softest fan base. I'll give you an example. SEC Unfiltered, my guys at SEC Unfiltered posted a clip today about baseball, and one of the guys over there said that Georgia is the most. They asked the question: is Georgia the most overrated team in college baseball? Because Georgia's ranked number 5 in D1, ranked number 3 in perfect game, and Georgia's starting pitching has not been good. Georgia's had to have like 3 walk-off wins versus like Florida Gulf Coast University in the last 5 games, right? And so they post that question. Literally, there's like maybe 10, 15 replies, all Tennessee fans. All Tennessee fans. And the reason that they are so soft about baseball in particular is because that's their sport right now. They just won a national championship in baseball. That's their sport. And so instead of relishing in, we are national champions. We are, number 2 in the country in D1 in the D1 poll and number 1 in every other poll. Instead of that, Georgia posts a final score graphic of playing Quinnipiac or whoever, Georgia played Quinnipiac, played UNC Wilmington, those teams. Tennessee fans are replying to Georgia baseball account because they are so nervous about Georgia baseball being good, because Georgia is the team that ruins their season in football almost every year. When they were number 1 in 2022 and they came to Athens and Kirby Smart beat the brakes off of them when they were number 1 and thought they were going to the college football playoff and, all those things. So they have all that built up. So now with baseball, they're the ones coming in, and to me, that's what soft is. That to me is like, you don't have enough security in your own reigning national championship team, who's number 1, in consensus polls. You still have those insecurities around other teams, and you're in the comments around other teams. And so that for me is why Tennessee, and also just Tennessee, man, I'll tell you, I grew up in Northwest Georgia, close to the Tennessee-Georgia line, where it was I probably grew up around more Tennessee fans than I grew up around Georgia fans. And Tennessee fans, man, they are legitimately crazy. Like legitimately like a little bit off of it. And so you combine that and it's just like, man, like it's a powder keg. But for me, it's just whining. It's continually whining. They're whining about Georgia baseball's schedule. instead of celebrating their own team. Like who does that? Who sits around and says Georgia hadn't played anybody when your team is number one in the country in the sport? And it's because
It's
they're
March 4th, and not anybody has played, or not everybody has gone out and played a gauntlet at this juncture.
no, and they're doing it with LSU because LSU's ranked number one in one poll, and they're ranked number 2 in that poll, and so they're doing it with LSU. They do it in basketball every year where they bow their chests, and Georgia basketball, little old Georgia basketball, who has not made the NCAA tournament in 10 years until this year, has made a Final Four, and Tennessee basketball has never made a Final Four. But they will sit there and talk about how their basketball team is freaking blue blood, and they have never made a Final Four. So that's Tennessee.
I mean, and they, like Evan's mentioning right here, I saw it for over a decade. I love the guy, but Rick Barnes in March, I mean, this is a tale as old as time. And don't listen, I will root for Tennessee basketball because of Rick Barnes, but I still do not expect to be watching them on the, well, maybe they make the Final Four. They're pretty loaded, play really good defense, got a shot.
You say that, but man, look at last year. Like if you could make the Final Four with Dalton Connect and those guys, I mean, especially the road that they had, I was like, last year was the year.
Hey, what does that even mean? Hey, we were on that road.
Exactly. No,
softest fan base. No, I'm kidding.
No, I'm kidding. I'm kidding. But no, that is for me. It's it's tough. And you say that, but that's Tennessee, right? So Tennessee, as of today, they are basketball national champions in their mind, right? Already. In 2022, after they beat Alabama 52-49 on a field goal that basically like barely cleared the crossbar. They rushed the field, hadn't beat Alabama in 15 years or whatever it was. They went out and printed a coffee table book in the middle of the season called Revivalls. Like the balls are back. Like, and then Georgia beat the brakes off of them. It's like this is what Tennessee does. This is what Tennessee does.
So you tell me we shouldn't make a book because we also beat Alabama. Also got a little humbled by Georgia. So no books yet. Okay, I don't want.
Well, when you beat Georgia, you'll make a book. Now it's Georgia.
Starting to feel that way. And again, credit to Bulldogs Twitter, who definitely have had fun with me over the last 72 hours for asking the question I did on Saturday. Guys, if you're on YouTube only and you want to try X out, it's a lot of fun. It really is. There's going to be people that take things too far, like any other social media app. But for the most part, you're going to be around the type of accounts and the type of content that you want to be around. Mm-hmm. And that's how John and I have met, and 100% of the other people that come on these shows. So, check it out. And that's where, you can find me there at 40 Acre Vibes, Ghost of Texas Football at John Tweet Sports, him and his massive following of Bulldogs and SEC loyalties. They're fun to follow, man. SEC Twitter is a blast. You can get a lot of good content, learn a lot about other teams. Matt, you haven't missed anything yet. We haven't even discussed the Texas A&M Aggies there. And with that, I'm going to ask you, John, rank these 4 fan bases for me as far from softest to, I guess, the unsoftest or the toughest, whatever you want to use. Sure. But we're going newcomers in the last 15 years. Missouri, Texas A&M, Oklahoma, and Texas. And just from your personal experience and what you've seen so far with others' experiences.
Yeah. So I'm going to go – so I'll go least soft to most soft. Fair. So the first one is the least soft. So I'm going to say Oklahoma.
Okay.
Texas.
Okay.
Mizzou and Texas A&M. Texas A&M is the most soft fan base of those 4. Mizzou, I love my Mizzou friends. Mizzou, Mizzou has a chip on their shoulder that I have no idea where that chip came from, why it's there, why it exists. Mizzou is the SEC team that you can, make a comment about. Rank SEC teams, in most likely to win their first game of the season. And, it could be all SEC teams are all likely. They're all likely to do that. But if you don't put Mizzou at the top, if you take 16 teams and literally the answer is yes for all of them, but you put Mizzou at 4 or 5 or 6 or 7, you're going to get Mizzou fans in your mentions. But Texas A&M, man, Texas A&M, I don't get it. And this goes back to what I said earlier about being soft, is that it's the reactions that you have when things aren't going well, coupled against your expectations versus reality, right? Yeah, Casey Smith, great example. Kirby Smart comes out and makes a joke about Johnny Manziel on a stage at a coach's clinic and says, what do these 4 quarterbacks have in common? And it was Joe Burrow, Cam Newton, Johnny Manziel, and I forget the other one. Maybe Bryce Young. But what do these 4 quarterbacks have in common? And somebody said they're all champions. And he just made a joke. He said, what is Johnny Manziel champion of? Champion of Fireball. He made that joke. Casey Smith comes out, blast Kirby Smart, defending Johnny Manziel, right? And she says, Johnny Manziel lit up Kirby Smart's defense when he was at Alabama, all this stuff. That was the whole point of if you watch the clip, Kirby Smart says it. He says, after he makes the Johnny Manziel joke, he says, these 4 quarterbacks lit up my defense. Like that was his whole point of the coach's clip. It's literally his whole point of the talk. But she went out and got red-faced defending Johnny Manziel, saying that he, basically what Kirby said in the clip, if you watch the entire clip. That's Texas A&M. It's the expectations, versus reality, and then you bump that up against just how they react to everything. It's tough, man. It's a tough scene.
See, I would have argued with you 8 months ago, even 5 months ago. But I went, and it probably took me an hour and a half because I'm not the smartest tool in the shed or the sharpest. See, told you. But I created that silly duck gif. The duck is smoking and shaking his head kind of in disapproval. And I put a Longhorn hat on it. And I started using it when A&M would lose a game. And Oklahoma too. But I kind of got bored with that because it was every Saturday thing. But yeah, I mean, I had Aggies that I've interacted with for 2 years plus on that app that were just blocking me immediately over that. And that was, the end of the relationship. I was told that my character called into question over a GIF. And so, hey, now it is the first game back, a brand new rivalry, or not brand new, a brand new renewed rivalry. And you have a loss on your home field where you only score 1 touchdown and it came via defense. Yep. So I get, there's going to be some raw emotions in that one, and I get it. But yeah, I'd say, obviously I'm not going to put Texas last in there. And I think Oklahoma, they've got a lot to stand on. So they talk with their chest and they're not backing down. They're not really scared of anything. I definitely agree with you about Missouri and the chip. It's an odd chip because it's like people are counting you out, but for good reason. You did win the SEC East a couple times. And yeah, speaking real quick, we're going to pause before we lose this comment. But today, Lounge, I think it was Lounge. Wasn't it you? Yeah, Lounge posted a picture of a king cake with some pork belly burn ends on top of it. And I'm curious as to if anyone else would actually try that. I said I'd take a bite. I didn't say of which part. It's just I'm gonna get the pork belly burn in with the least amount of king cake on it. That's the way I'll go. But that's pretty wild. There's some wild comments.
Yeah, I mean, for the people, it's a piece of king cake with literally a pile of pork belly or burn end. I don't know if I guess
separation.
No separation.
No dividers.
It reminded me of anytime you go like Thanksgiving when you pile your food all up on top of each other. But it was like if you did that with foods that don't go together. If you just took like a plate and you're like, all right, I'm just going to take, a piece of, a piece of birthday cake and I'm going to throw turkey and dressing and gravy on top of it. It's like, what are we doing here?
You got two good things, which I mean, to be honest, I don't love king cake, but you got two good things here. We don't need to mess it up. I mean, that's me for peanut butter and jelly. Don't like it together. I think it's the most overrated food staple this country has ever seen.
Boy, that's gonna be 3 lounge dogs. That's gonna be 3 lounge dogs.
John has a 1 to 5 lounge dog rating, dependent on what lounge dog's takes are for the day. And so Lounge is going with 4, which is I don't know, man. But I will say this: YouTube, you folks that are just watching, if you want to get on X, you missed peak X because when Jim Schlossnagle came over to Texas from A&M, that was one of the wild. And I get it though. A lot of hatred was spewed. A lot of people from some really big accounts said some really wild things.
Mm-hmm.
And in that moment, like I get it, I get it. But that right there is a good point. That's another good point from Matt, where it does make me think. I'm not calling A&M the softest because I do think there are a ton of Aggies that do have a good grasp of reality and where they stand in the athletic world. And I had one of my good friends tweeted it just a couple of days ago, and he was like, "I've come to terms with the fact that we're just going to be mediocre in the big sports forever, and until A&M proves otherwise on the field." I understand that line of thinking. I get it because they do put the money into it. The investments are large, and the results, they definitely haven't matched up. So, Evan,
it's
Evan
tough.
said
And speaking of, Texas A&M right now, it's the bottom of the 7th, and they're down 7-4 at UTSA versus UTSA in baseball. So they're close to losing another one to an unranked mid-major in baseball, that's tough after you lose Slosh, like they did, when you went to the College World Series, and then you lose your coach, and then the next season you start the way you started. It's tough. But to your point, again, I don't think Texas A&M is the softest. I think it's more around, it truly is around what's your expectations versus reality, and how do you react when when the reality actually happens, like, right? And that's really what it is. Like, this is what's going to happen. So, meat judging. I heard they were pretty good at shooting. I think they got a pretty good shooting team.
is this like skeet shooting? Like, what are they shooting here?
No, have you seen the shooting thing? Oh, I gotta show you that. It's basically where you, it's shooting skills, but you start with like a rifle and then another kind of gun. You go all the way down to like a 6-shooter kind of thing.
Okay. Oh, I know what you. Yeah, I've seen the cat from, I think it was Texas Tech, and he just absolutely yes, he was a wagon. He slayed it. Yeah, I can remember now.
That guy was legit.
For the most part, I haven't seen any like major crash outs because I'm not following everybody in the SEC, not all of the big accounts. I follow, who I see and who I found or ran into. But right now, it'd probably be a pretty good time for some of you Longhorn YouTubers to hop over there. We got Oklahoma dropping in a blowout to Dallas Baptist, and then you have A&M who's about to lose.
And LSU is down to North Dakota State 9-7 in the 6th inning.
Okay, now talk to me about LSU, John. What's your experience with the LSU Tigers? I know that our friend Joy, she may hear this at some point. I'm gonna be honest. As far as Twitter goes, to me, they react pretty strongly when things aren't going their way. A lot of high expectations around the boot, and I understand. But I have seen some pretty dang strong reactions, whether it be women's basketball, men's basketball, baseball, or not baseball. They were pretty dang salty the last couple of years with the title. But man, football season, and I get it. Brian Kelly's probably underperforming over there. But what are your thoughts with the old Tigers?
Yeah, so LSU, believe it or not, they're close to the top. They may be at the top of most national championships across all sports for SEC schools this is before Texas. I don't know where Texas falls and Oklahoma falls. This is before Texas and Oklahoma joined the last time I looked at this. But it's a proud university, proud athletic program. Any school where you can win a national championship with Les Miles and Ed Orgeron in college football, like your expectations should be through the roof every year, because that's literally, especially with Ed Orgeron, it's like that's like we didn't even have a coach and we won a national championship. So if we actually have a decent coach that we're paying money, like we should win. The thing I'll say about LSU, I think LSU is middle of the pack. I don't think LSU is soft, because LSU, when things aren't going their way, they do react vehemently, but it's usually against their own, like they're reacting to their own team, their own fans, their own coaches, they'll be the quickest to be like, yeah, let's fire this guy. Yeah, you know, bench this, bench the quarterback, like, you know, change out the entire team. Like, they'll be the first fan base to do that. But what they don't do, again, when I say soft, what they don't do is what Tennessee fans do, which they're going to come, like, you're going to mention that they're losing a game and they're going to come at you with something that's completely unrelated to the game, sometimes even completely unrelated to the sport or sports in general. And they're just like coming at you with, like, you're like, what are you talking about? And so for me, I'll say LSU, that, you know, to Lounge's point, I do think there's a lot of fair weather fans in there. I wouldn't describe them as soft, but maybe slightly unhinged for sure.
And I think there's plenty of that throughout the SEC, of course, and that's what makes the fan bases what they are. Yep. And so I'll ask you this, you know, and in most cases, it's always the loudest ones are the ones that, you know, are what kind of people judge the fan bases on. So if there's a guy on Twitter which a lot of people from A&M, for good reason, cannot stand Kyle Lang. And I say for good reason, because he is on their head nonstop. And that's why they dislike him. We think it's hilarious. They get really, really tired of it. So I get the hatred. Absolutely do. Especially when it's, you know, his whole family are Aggies and they have to think like, man, he could be doing this to the other side. But he's not. He's on ours. But so I get it. I get, like, you know, the loudest ones, you know, because we've had Aggie Fact Thursday for years now. And so, but then you go like to the flip side of that, you have some of the burner accounts and these accounts with 105 followers who are not just being funny like Kyle and are going absolutely absurd and saying beyond outlandish things that, you know, things that make you think they really maybe should see someone or something. And so those people, a lot of times that leaves a big impression, you know, like when, you know, Mr. Evan comes over here and I'm just like, wow, all these Georgia fans are just ruthless or mean. They just don't like ghosts, you know, you know, and of course that's not the case. Y'all are mostly awesome. And so that to me is like, I do hate it because going back to the bottle throwing, we have maybe 1% of the crowd tossing bottles and it's mostly guys that are 22 years of age or younger, not calling out the students again. And so we have so many fans. Georgia has so many fans. A&M has so many fans. Is Texas a soft fan base, or is it just the loud ones are always heard the most? And I'm trying every way to get around it.
I'll tell you objectively for me. And let me say this before I give you my take on Texas. Let me give you my take on my own fan base. I think Georgia, there's a very large contingent of the Georgia fan base that is extremely soft. There's a contingent of the Georgia fan base who when Stetson Bennett, so JT Daniels started the 2021 season at quarterback. He got hurt. Stetson Bennett came in, started. They wanted Stetson Bennett benched. Stetson Bennett lost the 2021 SEC championship game to Alabama when Stetson Bennett lost it. When Kirby Smart's defense gave up 41 points to Alabama, everybody blamed Stetson Bennett. Everybody was like, bench Stetson Bennett. We don't want Stetson Bennett starting. The guy comes in, lights up Michigan, beats Alabama in the national championship. Big contingent of the Georgia fan base said, congratulations, national champions for the first time since 1980. Stetson Bennett was the starting quarterback. Big contingent of the Georgia fans said, we don't want him coming back. We don't want Stetson Bennett coming back. Like, don't come back. The guy came back, went 15-0, you know, and they're doing the same thing now with, you know, Mike Bobo, because Mike Bobo was the offensive coordinator at Georgia and with Mark Richt. And so they're like, fire Mike Bobo because Georgia played one of the toughest schedules they've ever played. They lost 3 games and all of a sudden somebody's got to pay for us, like losing the, you know, not going 15-0. Somebody's got to pay for it. So there is a big contingent of the Georgia fan base that you'll see that as well, where they're really soft too. They can't take criticism of Kirby Smart, or they're giving undue criticism of their own team. So I'll say that. With that said, when I saw Texas throwing those bottles, man, listen. I get it. I've been in game. I have been. Trust me, I have been in games where Georgia, Alabama, the 2017 national championship, when Tyler Simmons blocked a punt and they called him offsides, and clearly the replay. We're sitting there watching the replay in the stadium, and he's clearly not offsides. Like everybody, like we've all been there in situations. But that to me was Tennessee throwing mustard bottles and golf balls on the throwing a golf ball at Lane Kiffin. Like it was the same thing to me. And what I hated the most about it was when the referees, and this wasn't Texas' fault, but when the referees got together and changed the call that was a non-reviewable call. And then
that's what separates it.
And then Texas Twitter was defending that. And I was like, okay. That to me was in that moment where I was like, all right, y'all, listen, that was pretty soft. That's pretty soft where you're like, instead of saying, hey, like, yeah, they didn't make the right call to begin with, but it was non-reviewable. They shouldn't reverse it. But like this stuff happens in sports. Instead of saying stuff like that, it was like defending the entire situation. And to me, that's a little soft. That being said, I like the passion. I can deal with passion. I can deal with people throwing stuff. Like I can deal with all that. It's just like when objectively, when the majority of, again, I just have a small view, but when the majority of what I'm seeing from that fan base is like defending it, I'm like, y'all, okay. To me, that's where it is a little too much.
And I don't know if it makes it soft or just hard-headed or almost where you'd say ignorant, because it's just like, okay, well, that's not a rule. It's obviously not a rule. You can't just defend it. Yeah, the call was wrong, but it's not the first wrong call in college football history against Texas, and won't be the last. Officials aren't perfect. But no, I mean, it definitely frustrated me to see the bottles because, like, as I mentioned earlier, I just knew everybody what the reaction would be, and it sure as heck was. I did not anticipate an overturned call, and in that moment, I was at the game, and in that moment, I was like, "Oh my gosh, this is going to go crazy!" I mean, people are going to absolutely freak out. I was terrified to get on the timeline just because, I'm going to get talked to like it's my fault. Like I personally went down there and had the SEC, and like I don't have like the biggest account or anything, but it's gonna happen, and so that's just part of it. And so I will say this for you guys watching: if you have not subscribed to the channel, do so right now. Please go on there very, very quickly, like the video, show my guy John some love, always doing fantastic work wherever he's at. But I'll say this: the way that our fan base treated Quinn Ewers bothers me a hell of a lot more than the way we did anything else last year, to be honest. Quinn loved the university, battled. To me, it was quite clear he was hurt. If you watch the scheme that Texas was trotting out every Saturday compared to what we did in the past with Quinn, we would throw the ball down the field. Quinn did not take chances down the field. Kirby Smart in Georgia, I think they knew he was hurt, and they took advantage of that, and that he was not trying to push the ball more than 25, 30 yards down the field on any chances. Hey, be better. Like, do you think Quinn Ewers wants to go out there and struggle against Georgia in the biggest moment, the biggest home game at DKR, and what was, I don't know, I think I said like 15 to 20 plus years. Like, what are we doing? 30 years since Nebraska, or 25 years. Yeah, Nebraska in 99. Be better. I mean, like, you just heard John tell a story about Stetson Bennett coming back and, just winning another national title. No big deal. Okay, yes, we all think Arch is going to be really, really good. A lot of the college football world expects Arch to be really, really good. Do you really think we would have gone out there and won more games than we did if Arch plays the full season as starter? It would have hard to believe because he was going to be banged up. I mean, let's look at it. He had multiple little nicks just throughout the season. And yeah, that's what I'm saying, Evan. And it's just, I'm only talking to a few. There's most of the people are really, really supportive and backed Quinn the whole way and knew, what I truly believed is that Quinn was our best chance to reach our ceiling. And I think that it was. And so, yeah, I mean, we all had those.
Yeah, and I don't want to be that guy, but like, the people criticizing Quinn Ewers, I mean, I sat there and watched, and I came on your show, the week before that Georgia game and said, don't be surprised if Kirby Smart and that Georgia defense everybody has come to know and fear shows up in Austin, Texas. Because I've watched Kirby Smart now for 9 years, and I know how this guy prepares his team. And people can say, whatever they want about Quinn Ewers, but like there wasn't a quarterback in the country that you were going to put on that field versus that Georgia defense. And Arch came in, by the way, and he didn't look that good because Jalen Walker was like eating his lunch like he was eating everybody else's lunch. And that's the thing. Sometimes that's just how it works. And coaches like Sark, for example, know that like they see these guys, they see thousands of reps in practice, thousands. They sit in meetings with these guys. They know their mentality. And Sark, in my opinion, probably knew that like, hey, I could do more harm than good by putting Arch in a situation where he's not successful, because whether it's the opponent, whether it's the where he is in terms of like the reps that he's getting with the receivers that he's working with or the connections or whatever, I could put him in a worse situation that's going to affect now the perception of him going into next year. When I have a guy who, he's the proven starter, he's the known commodity. He, took us within, one interception of playing for a national championship last year. And so I think there are those times where fan bases just get so in their feels, whether it's on Twitter or otherwise, around just like, I know better sitting on my couch than this guy who literally watches both of these guys. It takes thousands of reps every single week, hundreds of reps every single week, sit in meetings, have been with them,
recruited
them, met with them and their family and their parents and their dogs and their siblings
for years.
For years. But I know better, because I just know that like this other guy could do better. And to me, though, I will say I don't think that's. I think I would categorize that as soft in a different way. I think for me, that's more of just, it's just insecurity, right? It's like, where that's coming from is like, I don't have enough faith in my coach, the staff, the team, whatever. I think I know better, but it's insecurity because you're like, we're going to lose with this guy. And I don't want to lose. So therefore I'm going to go out and like make these comments that this needs to change or this needs to happen. And, and I mean, Georgia, like it's a similar situation, right? Like Carson Beck was playing horrendously for 4 game stretch last year. And, Georgia fans were like, this guy's terrible. Like get him out. And we saw like Gunnar Stockton, he came in, he motivated the team versus Texas, all those things. And he didn't play that bad versus Notre Dame in the playoff. But like you saw the difference. You were like, hey, like what Kirby Smart and Mike Bobo knew was like Gunnar Stockton wasn't going to do much better than what Carson Beck was doing. And so at least like the continuity, protecting Gunnar for another year, whatever. Coaches know, and you gotta like you don't get to the level that Sark is at. You don't get to the level that Kirby's at. You don't get to the level these guys are at, without knowing like your players and what they're capable of and all those things. And so I agree with you on that. The questioning around personnel and all that stuff is that's the weakest mentality for me, because I would never go into so I don't know if folks know this about you, so I don't want to give any information away, but like you're a golf instructor, right? So, I'm a horrendous golfer. I've never taken a golf lesson in my life, right? But it would be like me, sitting there and like, watching some YouTube videos on how to swing a golf club. And then, going to watch you give a lesson and be like, yeah, no, you're doing it wrong. You should do like this. Like, it's like, what, like who, like who would think to do that in a normal everyday life job? Like you wouldn't walk up to,
you get that in the golf world.
Yeah.
You get plenty of the YouTubers and they're absolutely like, oh, well, I saw it on YouTube, man. I would try this.
Exactly. But nobody does that. And like, you're not walking into you're not walking into, US Steel where they're making like, massive steel manufacturing and telling the guy running the steel mill, like, oh, you should do this and do that. Why don't you your supervisor's not any good. Like, you wouldn't do any of that stuff. But because you watch, sports talk and you watch, YouTube and you watch all these things, it's like you think like you can just show up and like, better than these guys who are doing it. And that's the frustrating part.
You're dang right, man. And it got so toxic between like our fan base last year. There's a big divide. And Evan, I will help you anytime, my man. You come here, I'll come there. We'll figure it out. We can meet in the middle. Mm-hmm. But anytime that Quinn Ewers would do something really well, there was people who was like, oh, well, Matthew Golden just made a hell of a catch. Ball wasn't where it needed to be. And the other people were like, no, Quinn is the reason Texas is back. Quinn is the reason that we're number 2 or 3, 4, or 5 in the country. And it got really, really weird when it's obviously a team effort. It's a culture Sark's brought in. It is a bit of the NIL, which I'm going to go ahead and rant for 2 minutes, John.
Please go for it.
Forgive me for this.
No.
But if you were to ask me and say, hey, let me be real with you, Cord. Did NIL and the transfer portal really help Texas out as far as their kind of their revival of a football program? I'm going to look you dead in the eye, and I'm going to say that is a very fair question. And I'm going to say, yeah, it did. And it's been a perfect storm. We had in my opinion, what is the best, I can't say a perfect head coach. There is no perfect head coach. The best coach at the right time, mixed with a transition into the SEC, which recruits want to see, NIL, transfer portal, which we're very, very effective in both regards. Yeah, that's more than a fair question. But by God, if I'm going to listen to Cam Newton of anybody come out and challenge Sark in culture and ask and imply rather that Texas is only back because of NIL, because they're buying a roster, because they just have money. We know Cam's past, and culture doesn't really seem to align with Cam's past. I'm going to be honest when talking about his Florida time. And so I'm not going to and hey, maybe I get called soft for this, John. We just talked about softest fan bases, but I'm not going to anybody else. Cam Newton asking that question definitely struck a nerve because Sark has mostly, for all we know, done things the right way in Texas. And so, Cam, yeah, you did piggyback Auburn to a national title, and you had a great run with Carolina. But between your past at Florida and the infamous Super Bowl lack of effort, as far as the fumble goes, I hope Von Miller tells him to go back under his rock. That goofball definitely bothered me.
Cam was taking NIL before NIL was a thing and legal, and Cam also was. You talk about culture, like Cam. He stole a laptop at Florida. He got kicked out. He went to JUCO. He, then put a bidding war between Mississippi State and Florida and Auburn and a couple other schools. Like, that guy knows nothing about, cares nothing about culture. He's also the same guy, by the way, who said he would rather keep his NFL MVP than have won a Super Bowl ring. Which again, it sounds a bit, it sounds like a guy who cares about team culture and all that stuff for sure.
Yeah, I mean, and the thing that stinks, John, is I was one of the bigger Cam advocates of anybody. I watched him win the national championship against Navarro College when he was at Blinn Junior College before he went to Florida. Before he went to Florida. I watched him. My dad called me on a Sunday and was like, hey, there is a junior college national championship game today. And I'm like, great. That is really cool. Thanks for telling me. He's like, no, you're going to come with me. You're going to watch this kid play. He's incredible. And I was hooked. I thought Cam was awesome and then was rooting for him to go on and do good things. But yeah, so sorry. Just had to rant for just a moment. Unfortunately, Lounge, I've had the basketball score pulled up, not watching the game, just the game cast. And I don't have any words. Not surprised at all. I am emotionally dead. I'm a ghost when it comes to the reactions to this game. Texas could win by 10, and my reaction at this point would be the same if we lost by 10. We will have a new basketball coach, barring a miracle SEC tournament run, And personally, I've been privately saying I want your coach. So I hope that's okay. I know you're a baseball guy, so I don't think you'd really be too bothered by that. But we'll see. John, thank you for getting on here, chopping it up a little bit. Always fun. I feel like as we can get closer to football season, we could probably have this conversation again and dial it up a little bit, because you know how fan bases get. We might have one or two fresh on our mind from some interactions over the summer. Yep. But once again, guys, this is at John Tweet Sports. Get on the X app, Twitter app, whatever you want to call it. Follow this man. He's a lot of fun, does a lot of cool content, very wholesome content. Got some a podcast with his brothers Know Best, Speakeasy Sports. Check that out as well. Go subscribe to all their things. Yep. And again, subscribe to this channel. Like this video in particular. That helps me out a lot. Getting it back up. We're going to try to have daily content again every day. Tomorrow at 12 Central Time, I'm going to have my first PGA event breakdown. We have the Arnold Palmer event at Bay Hill Golf Club, event that I've been to in person. I am a golf junkie. We will start breaking it down. I have a good friend, Mr. Danny Oldani, who will be joining me, and we will have a Bay Hill Arnold Palmer Invitational breakdown for you. Hoping my guy Rory McIlroy comes through again. So, John, any last words?
No, I love all that. My profile pic on Twitter is Arnold Palmer as the honorary star at the Masters. My granddad played a lot of golf, kind of semi-pro golf on the weekends, tournaments a long time ago in Myrtle Beach and Hilton Head and those areas, and was a big fan of Arnold Palmer. He died. My granddad passed away from cancer when I was 13. Never got to play golf with him. But he was a big fan of Arnold Palmer. So Arnold Palmer, my guy, Arnold Palmer Invitational. I can't wait to watch it.
Can you imagine a Twitter world where we have Arnold Palmer and Jack Nicklaus at the head of the golf game and the Twitter rivalries? Because back then it was you were part of Jack's army or Arnie's army or Jack. I don't know what Jack's guys called himself.
Something, yeah.
And I was obviously an Arnie guy as well. Then that's when we went to all 4 rounds at the Arnold Palmer the year after he passed, the first tournament after he passed. We just kind of felt moved to get out there and check it out. But hey, yeah, so golfers, come check in tomorrow. We'll be here. It will be recorded on YouTube, so you can check it in anytime. But we will be dropping some picks. Tournament starts Thursday, so we might want to fill it out and see what we're working with. Evan, Lounge, all you guys, Matt, thank you for being in here. Really appreciate the support. Y'all all have a great night. Stay safe out there. Some crazy